Hello, everyone, and welcome to Northwestern. If this is your first time joining us for some of our virtual content, welcome. If it is not your first time, then welcome back. We're very excited to have you. What we'll be doing today is as follows. I'll be sharing a little bit about what Northwestern has to offer and some of the things that make our university great, and then we'll introduce our student panelists today. And then the last and largest chunk of our student panel today is going to be hearing your questions for our student panelists and being able to provide some answers to any curiosities or questions that you have about the university so far. A good start would be probably introducing myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Drew Hazen, and I am a recent double alum of the university. I just graduated with my master's degree from the School of Communication, but I am also an undergraduate student or an undergraduate alum. I'm graduating with the class of 2018. While I was at Northwestern, I was studying human communication sciences, and I also took classes and received a certificate in our comedy arts module program. I think you're going to have a lot of great feedback from our panelists, so I'm very excited to let you hear what they have to say. But before we get into that, I just want to share just a few little facts and figures in terms of what Northwestern is and what makes it so special. To begin, Northwestern is an undergraduate institution that houses about 8,000 undergraduate students, and those students are they're representing all 50 states in the United States, and they represent over 80 different countries worldwide. Now that's really special for us because that leads to a great amount of not just geographic diversity, but many other different kinds of diversity in our classroom spaces and on our campus. And that diversity is going to help the academic experience of our students, given that there is great diversity of thought, perspective, and experience, and students are able to learn not only from their professors, but engage and learn from their fellow students as well. As a student at Northwestern, you'll be a part of one of 6 different undergraduate schools. You may also be a part of 2 or more, but most students are going to obviously be finding themselves in one of the 6 schools. Those 6 schools are the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, the McCormick School of Engineering and Applied Science, the Beanan School of Music, the School of Communication, the School of Education and Social Policy, and finally, the Medill School of Journalism, Media, and Integrated Marketing Communications. Now, as I said, you are going to be home in one of these 6 areas, but students may be taking multiple areas of study as well. And the great news is that it's very easy for students to pursue multiple academic interests while they're at Northwestern. And that's thanks in part to our academic structuring, which is called the quarter system. The basic gist of that is that instead of taking our entire academic year and splitting it in half, as would be the case with a semester institution, Northwestern takes its entire calendar year and splits it into 4 even parts, hence the name, the quarter system. That being said, Northwestern students' predominant academic experiences are going to be taking place during the fall, winter, and spring quarters. And so a great question that comes from that is why decide to do things differently? Why divide our academic time together differently than other schools? Well, a great benefit right off the bat is that by taking more academic periods, students are actually able to have lighter course loads for each of those academic periods. Students at Northwestern, on average, only take about 4 classes or so. But by taking those sets of classes more often, by the end of your time at Northwestern, you'll on average complete about 8 to 10 extra courses than if you had attended an institution that was based on a semester system. So those 8 to 10 extra classes can be used in a variety of different ways. Maybe you're wanting to pursue a second area of study and double major. Maybe you're wanting to pursue a major minor, where a major at Northwestern is about 11 to 17 courses. A minor would be about 6 to 9 courses. So right off the bat, those extra classes help you if you're looking to add on something like a minor. You also have the option to pursue a certificate as well, which is about 4 to 6 courses. That's going to be in a more specialized area of study. What's important to note, though, is that not all of the learning that we have in our classrooms or all the learning we have on our campus is going to be happening in our classrooms. There's lots of outside of the classroom learning that's going to be taking place as well. And those are going to be happening in spaces like our innovation spaces, as well as our research spaces here on campus. Think of an innovation space as an opportunity for students to take academic ideas or different concepts that they've picked up in a class and have the time and opportunity to apply them elsewhere. So that could be in a space like our garage, which is a great space for student entrepreneurs who have an idea for an app, a service, a product, whatever it may be. But if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you're looking to make something happen, the garage is going to provide plenty of resources and support for students looking to make those ideas into a reality. But as I mentioned, innovation spaces aren't the only spaces to make those things happen. Research is available for students as well at all levels of study. And it's great to know you'll be supported by Northwestern with your research interests. The university actually sets aside $3.5 million every single year just to help support undergraduates. And so that shows that there's a lot of opportunities for students in both traditional STEM research, but also non-traditional, non-STEM research. Whatever your interests are, know that you'll have the opportunity to explore all of that as well. Another important note is that with Northwestern's help, you may be able to do a bit of traveling as well. About half of our student population has some sort of international experience during their time on campus. And that's thanks in part to the fact that Northwestern has over 150 different international affiliated programs that give students a wide variety of options if they are looking to travel or learn abroad. About a third of our total student population does your typical study abroad. And what's great with that is that there's two ways in which we make it more accessible for students. The first way is that any financial aid that you have to support you during your time here on campus will actually travel with you and apply towards your study abroad costs. The second component is that any courses or credits that you accumulate while you're abroad will travel back with you and apply towards your degree progress. Both of those may not always be the same at other institutions, but we make sure that's an option for students at Northwestern because we never want finances to be the reason why a student shouldn't be able to enjoy an international experience. Other great opportunities, if students are interested in pursuing internships or other great work opportunities, are going to be available during your time on campus. A great resource to check out all of those different things is going to be through the Northwestern Career Advancement Office, or the NCA, which is going to have plenty of resources for students if they are looking to get connected professionally, whether that's connections for our alumni network, doing mock interviews, reading through and reviewing your resume, whatever support you're looking for, the Northwestern Career Advancement Office is going to be there to help you. Now, it's very important to note that there are plenty of academic in-classroom experiences and out-of-classroom experiences, but this place is going to be a home for you for several years. And I should start by saying that Northwestern does have a 2-year on-campus living experience for our students, meaning that all students in their first 2 years are going to be living on campus with their fellow classmates. That being said, students are more than welcome to stay on for more time if they wish to do so. If you are looking to get involved and explore around different opportunities on campus, there are going to be activities fairs for students, and you have plenty of options given that we have well over 500 student organizations to explore and learn from. It is really nice knowing that there's just so many options available to you if you are looking to get involved. We'll probably have a few questions on that during our panel component, and I'm excited to hear from our panelists as to the different experiences that are available for all of our students here on campus. The final thing that I should note is that we are not secluded just to this campus, but we are very lucky to be surrounded by the Evanston area as well as the Chicagoland area, all of which are going to be accessible for our students. And there's going to be plenty of opportunities through Northwestern to be able to engage in those areas as well. What I'd like to wrap up with before we start taking questions is a little information on the application process as well as financial aid. And so for any students that are looking to apply to Northwestern for the upcoming application cycle, note that we're going to be accepting applications through 2 portals, either the Common Application or the Coalition Application. We have no preference. It's whatever's going to be easiest for you and your high school in terms of putting together your application. What we'll be asking for are going to be pretty traditional components to a college application. We'll be asking for a student's transcript. That'll include the classes that they've taken, the difficulty of those courses, their performance and grades in those courses, and then also some out-of-classroom involvement as well. We want to know how students spend their time, not just in an academic setting, but in other settings as well. We'll also be asking for standardized test scores, although I should note that any student that is going to be applying for the upcoming 2020-21 application cycle, Northwestern, in response to the difficulties of students having access to appropriate testing sites and to access to just available dates, Northwestern is using a test optional policy, meaning that if a student is unable to register for and complete a standardized test, you're not required to submit any standardized test scores for your application. If you have already taken a test and wish to share that score with us, you're more than welcome to do so. Just as a quick update, I want to make sure students understand that test optional policy appropriately. Additionally, we'll be asking for essays, one of which is going to be the classic why Northwestern question. We want to know why you choose this institution over anywhere else. Why do you want to call this place home? Why do you want to be a Wildcat? Our hope is that we can provide some answers and some insight into that question during our panel today. So make sure that we're all listening very intently. And then finally, you'll also have letters of recommendation, a minimum of 2, but there can be more if you're wishing to have others tell your story and sell you as an applicant as well. You'll note that with all of that talk on what we would be seeking out in a student's application, there was no specific mention of financial aid. And that is because Northwestern is reading completely need blind as we consider our domestic applicants. So for any student that is accepted to the university, it's important to note that we are going to be meeting 100% of a student's demonstrated financial need. That means that if there is any difference between the total cost of attendance for Northwestern and what a family is able to reasonably contribute to their child's education, any difference between those two numbers is going to be met in totality by Northwestern's resources. If you're curious to know how your family's financial situation fits into that picture, my recommendation would be that you start by going onto our financial aid website and then seeking out the net price calculator. That's going to be a very helpful tool for you to start that conversation and understand your family's financial circumstances and how it applies to your college search process, specifically with Northwestern. Now, that was just a brief overview of some information that we have to offer, but the main component, and probably the reason why so many of us are here, is to hear from our student panelists. So why don't we go ahead and just start by having them introduce themselves and share a little bit about their time and their involvement on campus. Olivia, would you want to go ahead and start things off?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia. I am an incoming 4th year now. Wow, that's crazy. I'm studying biomedical engineering and psychology, as well as being on the pre-med track. I'm from Washington, D.C., forgot to mention that. In addition to being a tour guide on campus, I'm also a peer advisor, who are the people who guide the first years through our 1-week orientation called Wildcat Welcome. Henry, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Olivia. Hi, my name is Henry. I recently graduated from the School of Education and Social Policy, where I studied learning sciences as my main concentration. And then I was also an English and theater minor. And I loved CESP so much that I decided to stay here for next year and do the Accelerated Master in Education program. And I'm from Norwich, Vermont. Elam, you want to go?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Elam. I am a 3rd year now at Northwestern, studying physics and theater as a double major. I'm from Sugar Land, Texas. And yeah, that's I think it. Kandise, do you want to go next?
Sure thing. Thanks, Elam. Hi there, folks. My name is Kandise LeBlanc, and like Henry, I'm also a recent graduate of Northwestern. I received a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing from the College of Arts and Sciences and a Bachelor of Music from the Beaton School of Music in Voice Performance, and I was also on the dual degree track. I'm originally from Long Beach, California, and during my time at Northwestern, I was also involved as the senior missions counselor and a tour guide coordinator, and one of my favorite things I was a part of on campus was our ever-thriving a cappella community. With that, I'll pass it off to Margot.
Hey y'all, my name is Margot. I'm a rising junior. I'm from Rockville, Maryland. I'm majoring in economics and American studies. And when I'm not giving tours, I'm on the production team for Armadillo Day, which is one of the nation's largest student-run music festivals.
Wonderful. Thank you all to all of our student panelists for their introductions. For all of our listeners, if you have any questions or things that we're curious about, be sure to sound off in the comments so that we can answer those for you. To begin, I'm going to be tapping 2 of our panelists to help answer a pretty common question that we face at the university. So for Elam and Kandise, in that order, could you both talk about the difference between a double major and a dual degree, It's a small but important difference that I want to make sure our listeners understand. Elam, do you want to share a little bit about the double major process, and then Kandise can share a little bit about dual degree?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came into school knowing that I was super interested in both physics and theater, which I'm sure most of you will be aware that that's not a super common double major area. But because of Northwestern's flexibility with its quarter system and also just with great academic advisors and whatnot, I was able to take all of the classes that I needed to my first and second year so far for both majors at the same time. I'm on track to graduate in 4 years. And yeah, basically how it works is that you have a home school. So right now, my home school is the School of Communication. And then you also like branch out into another school. So I'm also branching out into the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences with my physics major. And yeah, that's about it. The flexibility of the quarter system is really great for double majors. A lot of people decide to double major while they're at Northwestern.
Great. And on the dual degree side of things, the biggest difference I like to point out is that for a double major like Elam's getting, you'll receive one piece of paper with 2 lines of specialization on it, versus for the dual degree, you actually have 2 home schools. In my case, it was the College of Arts and Sciences and the Beaton School of Music, and you receive 2 pieces of paper, each with their own line of specialization. Typically, the dual degree does take 5 years to complete, but within those 5 years, you're not just only taking courses that are for your 2 specializations. During your time, you have the opportunity to take courses just for electives and also through distribution requirements. So you're able to have that sort of academic flexibility within those 2 programs. But the biggest difference of having 2 home schools is that in addition to your major requirements for each of your specializations, you also have to do the graduation requirements for each school. So and for one of the more common circumstances, for if you're a dual degree student with the Beaton School of Music and the College of Arts and Sciences, you have to do the graduation requirements of music theory and oral skills in the School of Music. And then on the College of Arts and Sciences side, you have to do the graduation requirements such as first year seminars and language courses.
Great. Thank you both for that explanation. That's very helpful. It's once again just a small difference, but one that's still important to know. This next question will be heading over to Margot. We have some students who are curious, just in terms of sharing your experience, what's been a class or maybe some classes that have really stood out to you, either being a favorite, one that you learned a lot from, something that really stood out to you during your time at Northwestern?
That's a really good question. I've been really lucky. I've taken some really incredible classes here at Northwestern. I think one of my favorites is a class I actually took this past winter. It was called the Digital Theory and History of Communication. It was taught by 2 professors, which I think is something I never really thought would happen in college, but has happened to me 4 times now. I've had double professors, which is really cool. The 2 professors, one of them was a history professor, and he talked a lot about empire and is actually a New York Times bestselling author. And the other professor was a professor in our School of Communication who is one of the nation's foremost experts in Wikipedia, which I also had never occurred to me that someone could be an expert in Wikipedia. But basically what the class was about was how different digital technologies throughout history had affected human beings and how we act with one another. And it was a really fascinating class. It dove into history, it dove into computer science in some levels, it dove into sociology, and it really was one of those courses where you could look at so many different things at once. And it really gets to the heart of that like interdisciplinary feeling at Northwestern.
That's good to hear. And that's such an interesting connection that you pointed out as well. Up next, heading to Henry. As I mentioned, we're not just secluded to our campus, but we have the surrounding areas of Evanston and Chicago as well. Could you talk a little bit from your experience, maybe some friends' experiences, anecdotally, of what it's like to engage with the surrounding areas of Evanston and Chicago?
Absolutely. So Northwestern's outstanding location, being located in Evanston, we have a wonderful college town. There are lots of opportunities to get involved through service organizations. My friend Lane helped found Purple Pantry, which is a student-run group that redistributes leftover food from the Norris Student Center into food pantries in Evanston. And there's also a lot of trips sponsored through Northwestern to head downtown to Chicago. Particularly, I've been frequent on the arts trips downtown, whether we're going to see visual arts like the Museum of Modern Art, or to go and see shows downtown. Sometimes you can just sign up to hop on a bus and meet other people affiliated with Northwestern to see shows that are coming through Broadway in Chicago, like Dear Evan Hansen, Escape to Margaritaville we saw before it transferred to Broadway. So I'm definitely a fan of Northwestern's location because our community is an important part of who we are and where we are.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that answer, Henry. Up next, hearing from Olivia. We have some students wondering if you could talk just a little bit about what mental health resources or mental wellness resources are available for students.
Yeah, definitely. There are a ton of resources on campus. Some of the more notable ones, there are a bunch of student organizations centered around mental health, such as the Happiness Club. They give out hugs in front of our buildings all the time, and it's a really awesome way to just promote happiness on campus. In addition, we have more resources through our CAPS office, so trained psychologists that you can see and make appointments with, and they're all confidential. So a ton of really awesome resources to support students, since we know the academics at Northwestern are pretty rigorous. And in a more kind of academic sense, there are also a lot of different resources to help students with studying and kind of preparing for a more academically rigorous experience than their high school might have offered.
Thank you for that. Up next, we have a few students who are asking a question. I've heard about this Dillo Day. What's going on with something we've heard about before? I feel it's best that Margot share a little bit about that. You mentioned that you have some involvement there. So if you'd want to give a quick preview of what that's like.
I would absolutely love to. So Armadillo Day is a day in May or June where basically the entire campus stops and we decide that for a day we're going to have a music festival. So it's really incredible. There's a lot, like, I could honestly talk about this for hours. I'm on the production team, which basically means that I'm responsible for making sure that artists who are coming to Dillo Day are able to fully execute what they want on stage and basically make sure that the whole festival runs. Some examples of artists that have come in the past couple of years, Hippocampus, Tiana Taylor, ASAP Ferg, Dea were all part of last year's lineup. So it's really great music. I think something that's really special about Dillo Day is that it's a day where we're often working, doing student groups, like having an internship, like doing classes. Northwestern can be very busy at times. And this is a day where the entire campus just decides, like, you know what? It's our day. We're going to have fun and we're going to just be with each other and be with your friends. And I think there's something really special about that.
I would definitely agree with that. We all deserve to have a little bit of fun, especially after all the hard work that we've been putting in across the year. For this next question, I'd love to tap two of our panelists. If I could hear from Olivia and Elam. We have some students who are wondering about the academic environment on campus. Do we feel that it is a competitive environment, a cooperative one? What's been your experience? How could you best describe that for any of our student listeners? Why don't we start with Olivia?
Yeah, this was actually one of the things that I was, I think, most nervous about coming into Northwestern, especially being in an engineering major. But I found the complete opposite to be true. My classes have all been so collaborative. I think one thing that's really awesome about a lot of the first year curriculums for all of the schools is that a lot of first year students will be in classes with other first year students and have the same courses throughout. So for example, in the engineering school, we all go through the same year-long sequence called engineering analysis. And I felt that right away, it really created an environment that was extremely collaborative. I don't think I've ever done a problem set at Northwestern without having help from at least one of my friends. And in general, I think everyone here is just really supportive and willing to contribute their knowledge and also hear from you and just feed off of each other. And I found this environment to be extremely productive and collaborative.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. As a theater major, I just assumed that everything would be collaborative most of the time. But as a physics major, I was very worried about coming into like a competitive environment where I'd heard in other schools, especially, people like to, tear each other down instead of build each other up. But I really think that I found a community at Northwestern that is really great with collaboration. Over this past quarter, when we weren't in person together, I still probably had a Zoom call with at least 3 different people a week working on problem sets for different physics classes and just talking about the material so that we could really understand it together. And I just really feel supported in all of my classes by not just the professors who are more than happy to help you during office hours and sometimes just, whenever, but also by my peers who are going through the same stuff that I'm going through, and we can all learn together.
Great. Thank you all so much for providing insight on that. Obviously, the academics are why we're all here, so it's important to know what kind of environment we're going to be entering. This next question is going to be for Kandise. We have some students asking about what is the aspect of diversity that they experience on campus. Does Northwestern demonstrate its commitment to diversity? And wondering if students could speak a little bit on that.
Definitely. I think that there's a lot of different ways that Northwestern tries to foster not only just a diverse community, but also an inclusive community. And part of that is through various different committees and organizational structures in the Northwestern faculty and staff. And those places include the Student Enrichment Services and Campus Inclusion and Community, where students are able to engage with those places. Say, for me personally, as a first-generation student, I didn't really know what a lot of the aspects of college were like, and so I was able to go to Student Enrichment Services and figure out what laptop should I buy as a first-year college student, or how does one go about paying for books. And that was a really great way to being able to lean on staff members as a way of supporting incoming students. And then from there, once you're on campus, there's also a thriving community that's sponsored by a lot of different significant spaces. So these places include the Black House, the Shield Catholic Center, the Multicultural Center. And these are physical buildings that are on Northwestern's campus where students can go, say, to meet with other students that have shared identities with them, or maybe, say, go to the Black House for free printing, or going to the Multicultural Center because there's free Joy's, which is an Asian restaurant nearby in Evanston. And so you're able to engage with your peers in that way. And then from there, even outside of those, whether it be communities of color or various different forms of diversity, these conversations are also not just happening in these circles, but also in the classroom and with the Northwestern population at large. As Olivia mentioned before, during our Wildcat Welcome, we have training talking about diversity and inclusion to making sure that students have the same vocabulary and being able to address these issues, not just their time here at Northwestern, but once they go on and graduate as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Kandise. Obviously a very important question, so thank you for providing some light on that. Following next, we'd love to hear a little bit from Henry. If you could talk just about what opportunities, I briefly touched on in our intro, a little bit about the research opportunities, but if you could share either anecdotally or just in terms of what you've seen others experience on campus, what does getting involved in research look like? Does it have to stay on campus? Does it expand out to Evanston, Chicago? Providing some light on all of those curiosities.
So as Drew mentioned, Northwestern allocates $3.5 million to undergraduate researchers a year alone. And I want to emphasize that's not going to grad students or doctorate students, just for undergrads. You can really get started in research as early as your fall quarter of your first year on campus if you wanted to. I got involved in the undergraduate research apprentice program at the Evanston campus, working with college students and their perceptions of safe spaces on campus. But my friend Isabel also did the undergraduate research apprentice program, and her research center was downtown at our Chicago campus, and she was studying how cortisol levels during periods of high stakes testing impact sleep equity. But I will say that there's also plenty of non-behavioral science and non-STEM research at Northwestern as well. For example, my friend Terrace got funding, not through URAP, she got an undergraduate research grant, and she was able to write an independent thesis on the role of the law in Rogers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma. So Northwestern even paid for Terrace to fly out to New York City for a front row seat at the recent Broadway revival, which is pretty cool if you ask me.
Would definitely agree as well. Always a great day when you get to see a Broadway show. Coming up next, I'd love to hear a little bit from Elam. We have a nice question coming from a student. What would you consider, or if you could talk a little bit about a hidden gem on Northwestern's campus? Maybe something that we don't talk about every day, but something we'd love to hear about regardless.
So this is one of my favorite questions to always answer because I work in the Dearborn Telescope Observatory on campus, and I probably say the words hidden gem 5 or 6 times while giving tours of the place. So it's a telescope literally smack dab in the middle of campus. It used to be the largest telescope in the world, which I think is awesome. And I give tours there to anybody from the Evanston or surrounding area who wants to come every Friday night when we're open. You can come for free and look at the stars through what used to be, the world's largest telescope. So that's really awesome. And it's not only a hidden gem for, regular Northwestern students, but also for students in physics and astronomy like me who we're learning stuff every day about space and stars and whatnot. But the ability to go outside and just use a telescope to see nebulae and the different planets and stuff like that is really, really cool to me. So that's my favorite spot on campus, and also a really, really great place to go every night just to see some cool stuff.
Definitely. Just one of the many hidden gems we have on our campus. Hoping to hear from Margot next. We have some students who are curious about, what does school spirit look like on campus? What does it mean to be a Wildcat? If you want to share a little bit on that.
Absolutely, would love to. So Northwestern is a Big Ten school, as I'm sure you're aware. Something that's really great about going to Northwestern, especially when it comes to athletics here, is that every student can get into any sports game free with just their student ID, which makes it so easy to go to football games or anything else that you're interested in. I would definitely say there's a lot of school spirit here. I remember when I first applied to Northwestern, I heard about Purple Fridays. Basically, it's the idea where on Fridays, people wear Northwestern gear around campus. I thought it was fake. It's not fake. It's real. It's really funny. And it's been really exciting actually to see people's spirit come out in that way. During the fall, during football season, usually you can find people definitely going out to the game, supporting the Wildcats. Even when it comes to smaller sports, I have a bunch of friends who are on club sports team or even intramural teams. And basically that's when a club sport would kind of be a varsity sport in high school. And then a intramural team is kind of just people I had all these friends on my floor my first year at school, in my residence hall. I think it was Julia and Alana and Henry who all made this intramural volleyball team together, and they were really bad at it, but they all did it. It was fun. But on the whole, athletics at Northwestern is definitely accessible to anyone who wants it, and Wildcat spirit is 100% there, no matter where you want it.
Definitely agree with that description, and want to stress how little athleticism you need to actually participate in intramurals. Plenty of examples of that, myself included. So know that there's plenty of ways to stay active and connect with that school spirit, as Margot was describing. Up next, would be great to hear from Kandise. If you talk a little bit about the study abroad experience and what that looks like for different students.
Definitely, and Drew did a great job of talking a lot about the statistical side, so I'll give a little bit more of the student perspective. Oftentimes, students will choose to study abroad during their third year during the fall semester, even though we are in quarter systems. A lot of the affiliated study abroad programs that Northwestern partners with are on semester programs. And what's great about that is us as Northwestern students, we're able to go abroad and get a semester's worth of credits while only missing fall quarter. So for me, I had the great opportunity of studying abroad just this past fall in Milan in a music program. And I actually gained so many credits that I had the opportunity to graduate early through studying abroad. And that's another thing I wanted to highlight too. For me, as being a music person, oftentimes I thought, okay, I'm not going to have the opportunity or time to study abroad. But Northwestern has academic advisors across all the disciplines. So if you are an engineer who wants to go to Scotland, or if you are a radio, television, and film major and you want to go to New Zealand, there are plenty of programs that are able to combine both your academic interests and also your cultural interests as well.
Nice knowing there's a lot of opportunities to travel and experience what you're just describing. Up next, to hear from Olivia, could you speak a little bit more on what it's like to be a part of the quarter system, what your personal experience was that, how that you feel, how it differs by taking a lighter course load compared to what you would be doing otherwise, just generally speaking on some of those features.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite things about Northwestern is definitely the quarter system. As I mentioned before, I'm studying biomedical engineering and also psychology, as well as being on the pre-med track. And I truly would not be able to do all of those three at a semester school, just the sheer amount of classes that I'm able to get in on each, in addition to also being able to take classes outside of those three that I'm just interested in. I think one of the things about the quarter system that took me a little bit of getting used to is how more fast-paced it is. Instead of a typical 15-week semester, we have 10 weeks and then go into our finals. But I think this is something that professors are really aware of students coming in, that it is quite different from high school. And most of my professors, all throughout my first year, were super accommodating about this. And additionally, they structure classes to fit the quarter system. So if there are any courses that need to be taught over the course of a full year, they'll have that for 3 quarters. It's not like we're shortening a class or, condensing it so it's extremely overwhelming. All of the courses are really fit to match the quarter system, which is awesome. And I just really appreciated the opportunity to be able to take classes and not have to really commit like a ton of time in my academic schedule to be able to explore something that I was interested in.
Would second all the things that you're sharing. Nice spending a little bit more quality time with fewer courses across a quarter than having to do so with a larger course load. Up next, would love to hear from both Margot as well as Henry. If you guys could just share, we've talked a lot about Northwestern, obviously, but if you could just share one thing that you'd consider to be your favorite aspect of being a Northwestern student, whatever that might be. Margot, why don't we hear from you first?
This is going to be really cheesy. I'm so sorry in advance. But I think my favorite thing about being at Northwestern is that every person that you meet on campus has something that if you get them talking about it, they will literally never stop talking about it. And that's to say, like, there's so many different people with so many unique passions and interests and things that they're researching or studying or doing in student groups. And I think that's something that's really unique about Northwestern. I've rarely seen a group of people that are so passionate about what they do. An example of this is I have a friend, Kate, who she's studying the intersection of gender studies and pop culture. And if you get her on like any sort of topic relating to that, she will talk for hours. And maybe it's not the most interesting thing to everyone else, but it's the most interesting thing to her. And I think that really speaks to the idea of like Northwestern being a space where you can 100% study and research and do whatever you want to do. And that passion is definitely palpable, even just walking around campus.
Yeah, and I'll echo Margot's sentiment about how just the people who surround you in the classroom at Northwestern are just as important as the person who's teaching the class. And it was really clear to me from the moment I got to Northwestern. One of my first classes was Intro to Shakespeare with the incomparable Dr. Susie Phillips, highly recommend. We had an 80-person class, and by the start of week 2, she knew everybody's name, which firstly decentered her position as a lecturer by being able to call on us by name, and also inculcated a really healthy community within the classroom for peer collaboration. And I felt like I could really turn around and talk to anybody in the class. And I just knew instantly from that moment that I was home and surrounded by people who love to learn together.
Thank you both for sharing a little bit on that. Want to echo both of your experiences as well. I've been here for 6 years now and have not met a boring person on campus. And it's great to hear that others feel the same way and have experienced similar time here as well. To hear next from Elam, if you could share a little bit for any student who may be concerned about how to balance their academics and their social life, how do you find that balance? Is that a different kind of balance in the quarter system? If you want to speak a little bit on that.
Sure, absolutely. So I think something that I knew to be factually true, but didn't quite understand before coming to college was how flexible your schedule becomes. Obviously, when you're in high school, you have to be at school for 6-7 hours a day. But in college, you go to class and then you'll have an hour here, hour there. And so it's really interesting to how important time management becomes as a college student. And this is true no matter where you are. But Northwestern is really cool because we have the quarter system and only 4 classes each quarter. You don't take, you're still in class about 15 hours a week, but you can really focus on those classes a lot more, which is really nice. As for work, social balance, I think that we've struck up a really, really good balance here at Northwestern, especially with the dorms. I found my own community really, really welcoming and helpful in my residential college my first year, and that's where I spent the majority of my social life. I'm a huge nerd, so I love playing board games all the time. And I played probably a board game at least once a day while I was at school, which was kind of crazy, but really, really awesome. But that being said, I was also able to be involved in student theater. I was also able to take 4 classes each quarter and work as a tour guide as well as a telescope operator. So you can really do a bunch of really, really great things while also staying active in your social life and community. And as long as you get good at time management, you can really have a good, productive time at college.
Definitely. Thank you, Elam, and very inspiring news for any board game enthusiasts that are listening today. So thank you for that. Up next, I'd love to hear from both Olivia and Kandise on a good question, in my opinion, in terms of what might be, or what would you consider to be one of your greatest challenges that you faced during your time at Northwestern? So whatever that means to you. Olivia, why don't we start with you?
I think one of my greatest challenges actually has to do with academics. I feel like for me, it was kind of unexpected, but I adjusted fairly quickly my first year and was like, oh, great, got it down now. And my second year at Northwestern, I took organic chemistry and it all just kind of started crumbling down. And I just had a really difficult time academically, also dealing with personal issues that coincided. But I had so much support, both from my peers. We talked about this earlier, the collaborative environment at Northwestern, just so much support from my friends and fellow classmates, as well as being able to talk to my academic advisor and professors and just really say to them, hey, like, I don't know if I can take this test tomorrow. Can I have an extra 2 days and be able to take it then? And so many professors were really accommodating. So in general, I think just really being able to lean on the people and the resources around you during those difficult times was something really important for me to learn.
And for me, I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was dealing with rejection or failure. I think I was kind of your stereotypical Northwestern student. I was the kid that took 10 AP classes and did all-state choir and all those crazy things. And so when I came to Northwestern, I always assumed that, oh my goodness, I'm going to succeed in everything the first time I try it. And that wasn't the case, just because there are so many wonderful, amazing people. I remember my first year, I didn't get into an a cappella group, and I was so upset. But I realized it made me take a second to reevaluate why I wanted to be a part of a music community on campus. And then I actually was encouraged to re-audition next year. And I eventually got into my a cappella group, the X Factors. I have a great chance of singing with them for 3 years. And I think even though that there can be a difficulty in being in or trying to find a way into a certain student organization that you told yourself that 10 years ago that you wanted to be a part of, maybe that may not work out the first time, but the Northwestern community is really supportive of you along your journey. So whether you get it the first time or you have to take a step back before you take a step forward, Northwestern and the friends that I've made, especially my roommates, were the people that I would be able to support and find support with.
Very valuable perspectives from you both. So thank you very much for being vulnerable and sharing a little bit on what that's like. Heading back to Elam for this next question, if you could talk a little bit on, you talked a little bit at the start of our panel as to students having different combinations of academic interests, but is it possible for students to kind of create their own paths, whether it's with a completely new academic field of study or combining in different and unique ways? Could you just talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a really, really valuable asset are the professors and academic advisors on campus. While like originally, if you just look at the course catalog and look at degree tracks, you might not see certain things. They are really, really excited to, make new things and make new paths and stuff like that for students. I have a friend who Northwestern doesn't necessarily have a specific architecture program, but they basically created their own in the McCormick School. So they're taking a bunch of architecture related classes, and then by the end they'll have that on their transcript and whatnot, that they went down that path. The other really cool thing is that there's a lot of intersection between things on campus that you wouldn't at first think of. I have a friend who was a theater major who told me about this class that he was taking that was literally how quantum mechanics can be applied to theater. I couldn't take it in my schedule because it just didn't fit with one of my classes. But he thought it was amazing. The professor who taught it was a theater person, but also really loved quantum mechanics. And so, he created that class as a union between the two fields. And, a lot of people who are interested in both subjects were able to take that. And so whatever you're interested in, talking to an academic advisor or a professor that's also interested in the same thing is super simple. And sometimes you'll see a course pop up for a single quarter that is exactly what you're looking for. At least that's been my experience so far.
Definitely. Thank you so much for shining a little bit of light on that. Up next, we'd love to hear from both Henry and Margot. Very classic question coming up next. For students who have, put in the work and put in their studying across the week, they've made it to Friday. Now what happens? What does a weekend at Northwestern look like? What could it look like? What opportunities are there? Henry, would you want to start us off and share just a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'd say that on a typical weekend, I usually try and go to support one of my student athletes from being a peer advisor who may have a match coming up. So maybe I'll go and see my friend Sean's baseball game on a Saturday morning. Then in the afternoon, I might hit the library and just brush up on what I studied the day before, so that night I can go and see an X Factor's a cappella performance, followed by a 10 p.m. show of Legally Blonde at the Worth Center. And then on Sunday, I may wake up, just sleep in a little bit and then head to Griffin's Tale rehearsal and adapt silly children's stories into songs and skits so that we can tour elementary schools together. So regardless of whichever activity you want to do, whether it's sports, arts, hanging out, studying, there will always be somebody else around your residence hall. I would honestly some days just walk outside of my room in Willard Residential College and ask in the kitchen, hey, does anybody want to hop on the shuttle and go to the baseball game with me? Never had a problem finding someone. So the community here is great.
I'm going to add on to that. So I would say probably it's the end of Friday. Elam, it's really funny that you mentioned board games earlier. My friends and I really love playing board games. So it's a Friday night. We actually have a tradition of every couple of Fridays, we'll go and play board games in one of their rooms. And that's usually what would happen on a Friday night. Saturday morning, say I wake up. I spend a lot of time at the Art Institute in Chicago. It's a really beautiful museum. If you haven't been there, I would highly recommend. I sometimes do this thing where if I'm having a big, if I had a really long week and I worked really hard, I'll be like, great, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to go to the art museum and I'm just going to stay there for 3.5 hours. And I'm going to get out of this mindset maybe that I've been in at school and just kind of remove myself and get some peace and relaxation from just looking at beautiful, amazing art. So I guess now it's about Saturday afternoon. Probably go to a student performance like Henry was talking about. There are millions. They're always happening. There's always a theater group doing some sort of performance, and I'm sure it's incredible. Wake up Sunday morning, probably go to our Deering Library. It's this absolutely beautiful library in the middle of campus, brush up on whatever I have for that week, maybe do some reading. Usually on Sundays, I'll do my casual reading that doesn't require that much thought, and then that evening, just hang out with some friends, get ready for the new week.
Definitely. Thank you guys for sharing a little bit of your schedules. Also great knowing that we have such a strong board game contingent on our panel today. Glad that's thoroughly represented for any students out there who may feel a strong connection to that. Up next, to hear from Olivia. You had mentioned in your introduction that you are on the pre-med track. How is that track different than a specific degree at Northwestern? And what does it look like to be advised, take classes on any sort of specialized track?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit about the pre-med track. So it's not a major or a degree. It's essentially just a set of classes that most medical schools, when you end up applying after college, require you to have taken during your undergrad time. So you essentially just take over your time at Northwestern whenever they fit into your schedule. And for every track that you can be on, there is pretty much an advisor. So when I picked up my pre-med track, I met with my pre-med advisor who was able to really help me plan out my courses. There's advisors really for everything at Northwestern. If you add a major or a minor, you'll always get an advisor with that. And it's really helpful because they'll also be able to talk amongst them and kind of be able to, for example, some of my credits will overlap in my psychology versus my pre-med track. Being able to coordinate those and figure out the most effective way to fit that into my schedule is really, really helpful.
Great. Thank you so much for enlightening us on that. I'm sure there's lots of students who have similar interests, so good to have some information to contextualize that. Up next, I'd love to hear from Kandise and then Elam when it comes to the opportunities for performance for students that may not even be in a major that is dedicated to performance. So on Kandise's side, if you could share just a little bit about what musical opportunities are available, and then with Elam, if you could share non-major opportunities for students interested in theater and that sort of performance. So starting off with Kandise.
Okay, lots of things to cover. So on the music side, specifically for non-majors, there are two performing ensembles. The Northwestern Camerata, which is a non-major vocal ensemble, as well as the Northwestern Philharmonia, which is a non-major orchestra. And for both of these, they're pretty much for students who have been either singing, performing for years, but don't necessarily want to perform it or necessarily pursue the major at a full academic level. And so it's a really great community on that end. There's also student ensembles that are part of the Northwestern catalog, so you can get academic credit for them. Those including the Beat and Contemporary Early Vocal Ensemble, which I happen to be a part of, as well as University Singers and University Chorale, which are also great ensembles to be a part of. And we also have our Northwestern Marching Band that performs with our football and basketball teams and gets to travel. The Northwestern marching band prides itself in that you actually don't need any experience to join the Northwestern Marching Band. I myself have never been at all trained in the saxophone, and I've received over 27 emails asking me if I would like to learn how to play saxophone for the Northwestern Marching Band. And the most popular major within NUM is the acronym for it, is actually engineering. So you have that accessibility to the arts, especially from a singing or more a musical sense, very from the get-go.
So yeah, talking about more theater, dance, stuff like that. Northwestern has over 80 shows every single year that are open to students to audition, both theater, musical, and dance shows. And every single one is open to audition for anybody. You don't have to be a theater major, dance major, anything like that. Anybody can audition. Not only that, though, if you're interested in theater on the technical side, I'd say probably 70 to 80% of those shows are directed by students, have the technical stuff done by students, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in any aspect of performing on stage or behind the scenes, there is a multitude of opportunities to get involved with that. I personally am a theater major, but I've been involved in some way with a student show every single quarter that I've been here, some quarters multiple. So it's really easy to get involved, to be frank, and it's really fun. That's about it, yeah.
Great, thank you. Always nice knowing that even though you're not on that set academic path, there are so many ways to get your hands dirty and to get involved. As I'm looking at our clock, unfortunately, we are winding down on our time together, but before we all part ways, something I do want to ask one of our panelists is a very important question to our community. For Olivia, I'd love to hear the classic question that every Northwestern student gets asked on their application: why Northwestern? As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the two essays that we have, and so it's a very important one that we like to hear about and know why you want to call this place home. So Olivia, would you want to share just a little bit of your experience as to why you chose Northwestern?
Yes, of course. So coming into Northwestern, I knew that I was really interested in engineering and also pre-med. And ever since kind of I had these inclinations, applying to colleges, all throughout the way I'd kind of heard, okay, you're going to have to pick one of the two. Do you want to do engineering? Do you want to do med school? Which one is it? And I'd heard that all along until I came to Northwestern's campus. And I remember during Wildcat Welcome, which is our orientation week, I met with my first year advisor, my first year academic advisor. And the first thing he said was, how can we make this happen? How can we make both of those happen and allow you to really pursue your interests? And I just felt like all throughout my time at Northwestern, the support has been incredible. We've talked about this a lot today, but the doors that are just open for you because of the support that you have from peers and professors, staff, everyone along the way is just incredible. And we also talked a lot about school spirit. And that's one of the things that I also love about Northwestern is I think people really have this mentality of work hard, play hard. Like we love our academics, we love learning in class, but we also know how to have fun and be able to, you know, celebrate in this community that we have that's really amazing and support each other outside of the classroom as well. So that's a little bit of my why Northwestern.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Olivia. And thank you to the rest of our panelists as well for joining us and providing some insight into some of your questions. To all of our listeners, thank you for spending time with us and joining us and meeting us virtually today. Wherever you are, we hope that you're safe and healthy and surrounded by loved ones. Thank you again for joining us. If you're looking to learn more about Northwestern or keep up with our online content, it's a really good idea to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we'll be updating content on there pretty regularly. There's also some old content as well if you're looking to catch up and see what we've been doing across the past several weeks. But as once again, thank you for joining us. Take care for the rest of your day, wherever you may be. Go Northwestern, and as always, go Cats.